For being a World War II game, Hearts of Iron does its best to divorce itself from the real World War II. Paradox have stated repeatedly over the years that the series will remain purely a military simulation. Civilians cannot be killed, you cannot terror bomb, you cannot starve, you cannot oppress, you cannot set up gulags or concentration camps, you cannot commit genocide or war crimes of any kind. They will not be modeled in the game, and they will be totally ignored as if they are not happening. On top of this, all Nazi iconography in the game is scrubbed out, and there will be no references to Nazi ideology. Now, I shouldn't need to remind Paradox that from the moment the first Japanese soldier crossed into China in 1937 to the day the fighting ended in 1945, the Axis powers committed horrific war crimes and engaged in totalitarian oppression on a daily basis against millions of innocent people for selfish, racist, and ideological reasons. And I know the Allies terror bombed, and that Stalin was almost as evil as Hitler, but I'm focusing on the Axis, and particularly Germany, because Paradox really does seem to intend to scrub from the game all references to the horrific crimes of those countries, and are determined not to let the player be able to carry them out. Now, in addition to following German law, this is done to prevent their game from being painted as endorsing war crimes should the people that play it choose to make that a goal for themselves. But this paternalist attitude does not really convince me as sufficient explanation, and I'll tell you why. If they were really trying to dissociate from Nazi apologists, then why, oh why, is this game so focused on Germany and on playing as Germany? The country features disproportionately in all advertising for Hearts of Iron. Its icon is an Iron Cross. Its name references the Iron Cross. And of course, we can't forget the disproportionate development time that is given to the European theater, particularly making the Germany versus USSR fight work properly. Forgive me for sounding a little conspiratorial, but these are the same people who implemented, on Hearts of Iron 4's launch, automatic military access between different factions that are fighting the same enemy just to fix an isolated problem with the Soviets conquering Poland, even though this change fucked up every other front in the game. The Eurocentricity and foregrounding of Germany is not possible to ignore. And as a final note, we also need to remember the official FAQ that was put up for Hearts of Iron 3 on its site, where it explicitly asked, "Why should I play as Germany?" And the devs said that because Germany lost, that makes them a fun and interesting challenge to play. The D-Day loading screens and foregrounding of MacArthur in Hearts of Iron 4 on the box art, it's not fooling me, guys. The only question left is not whether you're promoting playing as Germany and whitewashing their Nazism, but why. I've got a theory. You're pandering to Wehraboos. For those not familiar, Wehraboos is a modification of the term weeaboo, which is a Westerner obsessed with Japanese culture. Thus, a Wehraboos is obsessed with the Wehrmacht, the armed forces of the Third Reich. And these are not terribly uncommon people. If you consume popular, especially internet, culture related to World War II, whether it be a game or a movie or any kind of discussion board on the topic, Wehraboos are unavoidable. They are everywhere. They deserve their own video, to be honest, but what you need to know is that these guys love the Nazi military. They love the uniforms, they love the tech, they love the guns, the tanks, the aircraft, they love the commanders. Gotta love Rommel. And being able to command their favorite military forces against those cheating Soviets is a dream come true for them. A lot of them subscribe to Wehrmacht apologetics that try to dissociate it from the Nazi regime and pin all the war crimes on the SS and the Gestapo and the Nazi Party, and make the Wehrmacht seem like just a bunch of soldiers fighting for their country in order to make themselves feel okay about using it to take over the world, without feeling like the villains. And if you're trying to pander to this audience by making their favorite country seem less like evil incarnate, which it was, and more like the Germany of World War I, then congratulations. You've succeeded, because Wehraboos eat hearts of iron up, and they are absolutely everywhere in the fanbase. German world conquests are disproportionately represented in YouTube playthroughs and after-action reports of the game, as are fascist playthroughs in general. One of the most common things you will see people do if they put the game up on YouTube is, I'm going to turn this country fascist and take over a bunch of the world with my Nazi buddies. Thus, the whitewashing of Nazi Germany that you engage in serves two purposes, at least in theory. It placates the insecurities of Wehraboos about their love of the Wehrmacht and the military exploits of the Third Reich, while, in theory, keeping the game from being a safe space for real Nazi apologists and actual Nazis and sympathizers. But if you think you can get one without the other paradox, you don't understand who you're dealing with. The Wehraboos community runs a spectrum, from full-on Nazi to a teenager who saw a video about the Tiger tank on the History Channel. By whitewashing the Nazi elements, all you do is coddle their delusions about the Wehrmacht and make them more susceptible to further apologetics from their more radical elements. If you actually care about opposing Nazism, then rather than coddle them to get their money, you would confront them with reality. You would let them build their death camps, slaughter civilians, hear ideological quips, and confront them with the death tally of their actions. You would show them what it would truly mean for their beloved Wehrmacht to actually win, what their victory would enable, how many people would be killed. And with any luck, they might just realize that what they're doing is monstrous and stop trying to pretend a Wehrmacht victory would in any way be a good thing. Who knows? Maybe it might make them more inclined to actually play as the Allies. When was the last time you saw someone on YouTube do that? To try and stop the nefarious genocidal Nazi projects, to save as many people as possible. Putting such elements in the game would add a real gravitas to an Allied victory, to the importance of their victory, whether in the game or in reality, because the game would show you the human cost of every day that the war continues and the Axis powers still exist. And even if you didn't model civilian deaths and genocide, just having the game acknowledge the Nazi ideology of the German government, to have that swastika flag painted on every unit you control and every piece of land you occupy. The swastika is a powerful symbol. That flag reminds you of what it stood for. Even if you can't build a death camp and tell it whether to gas Jews or gypsies this week, by simply acknowledging and presenting the Nazi nature of Germany in the game, you implicitly acknowledge their crimes are being committed as you play. Now yes, the moral busybodies will get absolutely up in arms that you're promoting the Third Reich. But acknowledgement equaling endorsement is a fallacy. It's just one that fearful ninnies are prone to using when lacking an actual argument. And if someone does go full Nazi and boast about their exploits, killing every Jew on Earth and enslaving all the Slavs, well, that really says all it needs to about them, doesn't it? The increasing prevalence of Wehraboos and their misinformation, and even of people flirting with more extreme ideologies in general, tells me that hiding Nazi crimes does nothing to stop these kinds of attitudes. Indeed, it really only feeds them. Repeat that the Wehrmacht did nothing wrong often enough, and people will start to believe it. And if rather than challenge that by showing what the Nazis actually did, you instead whitewash their entire reign and pretend like they didn't do nothing, you're only exacerbating the problem. Now, I'll ignore the conspiracy that Paradox themselves are actually Wehraboos. I can't prove that. But it's plain as day, you pander to that audience, and you're not fooling me otherwise. And, okay, hey, if you just want to make money from them, fine, you have every right. But if you actually do care about combating neo-Nazism and apologetics, then you need to acknowledge what you're doing doesn't help.